Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode of Life in Law, and we have our special guest with us today, Lawrence Dressler. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
And so, can you just start off by telling our listeners just a little bit about yourself for those who aren't familiar?
Okay, I practiced law in the state of Connecticut for about 20 years. I did family cases, criminal cases, and civil cases, as well as federal cases in the areas in bankruptcy and criminal. I worked also did a lot of public defender work. I got assigned cases from the public defender's office. I argued appeals before the state and Supreme Courts. Also had an appeal with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal court, and I've done a number of trials. I did family court trials, custody battles, divorce cases, and I handled a number of criminal cases involving felonies, misdemeanors, all kinds of cases. And after practicing for about 20 years, in the year 2008, I started to do the early 2000s. I started to do some closings. The real estate market was really picking up, and everyone wanted to do a closing. Everybody was a realtor. Everybody was refinancing. It was the time when Congress passed all kinds of laws allowing people to get mortgages. It's very easy to get mortgages in Connecticut and throughout the country, and there was probably hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of people buying houses and getting very easy deals on mortgages. And I did some closings in 2008 just before the market crashed. After the crash, of course, it all came out that there was a lot of fraud involved in the whole housing industry, starting from Wall Street with the Wall Street guys taking all these mortgages, bundling them, and then reselling them. And there's some movies about it. And I was caught up in that prosecution. None of the Wall Street guys were prosecuted. None of the banks were prosecuted. They were all got civilly charged with fraud, and they had to pay huge fines, billions of dollars. But a lot of people at the bottom of the totem pole were actually handling the paperwork, got prosecuted, and I was one of many. And I did about a handful of closings and made no money other than my attorney's fees. And I had pleaded guilty to mortgage fraud, and I spent 18 months in a federal prison called Otisville in upstate New York. And after I got out of prison, Otisville was considered the club fed of prisons. It still is, I guess. And there's a lot of media attention on this prison because Michael Cohen, who had turned on Donald Trump back some years ago, went there. And so a lot of media outlets reached out to me because I was writing a blog about Otisville. It was called LarryNoodles.com. I wrote about Otisville and some of the people there. And so the media picked up on it because of the Michael Cohen case, and the New York Times interviewed me, and HBO Vice did a segment on me, and you can see all that on my blog. And so so this was about 2014 that I got out of prison, 2015, because I was in prison 2014. I committed the crime in 2008. It takes time for the federal government to actually move a case along. And I think I was indicted in 2011. So it was 8, 9, 10. So it took them about 3 years to catch up to me, which is, it depends. I mean, it was a lot of politics went on with these prosecutions because the government was being pressured to hold people responsible for the housing crash, everything else. So they didn't really get around to prosecuting people for some years after the crash. Yeah. And as I said, a lot of the people at the lowest bottom of the totem pole were prosecuted. For example, the guy who I did the closings for, he probably made $1 million, and he did like 6 months in jail because he cooperated with the government. So that's a whole nother
And
story.
what was his name?
His name was Levitin. He was written about in the New Haven Independent extensively about his case.
So you were indicted in 2013.
2011, and then I went to jail in 2014. By the time my case resolved, these cases take forever. The court system is very slow. The public doesn't want to fund the courts, so they're dealing with short staff and a lot of cases. I mean, you could look at the statistics, but number of judges and clerks, and secretaries is not even comes close to processing all these files. Excuse me. So
I see here something from the FBI website. It says for February 15th, 2013, a superseding indictment also charged Kwame Nkrumah, aka Roger Woodson, 47 of Meriden, Connecticut, Jax Kelly, 46 of Poughkeepsie, New York, and with conspiracy and fraud offenses. And it says Nkrumah was previously charged by indictment in February 2012, and Kelly was originally charged by indictment in October 2011. And then it says, wait, where's your name in here? Oh no, it says from September 2006 to November 2008, Constantinu, Salvatore Dressler, Nkrumah, Kelly,
yes,
Ronald E. Hutchinson, all those people conspired to commit mail wire bank fraud relating to purchases of numerous homes in New Haven. As part of the conspiracy and in connection with these purchases, the co-conspirators and others received millions of dollars in residential real estate loans by submitting false loan applications, fictitious leases, and false down payments to mortgage lenders. So it says you, along with the others, were charged with one count of conspiracy to commit mail wire and bank fraud, a charge that carried a max potential punishment of 30 years in prison. So did you end up taking a plea deal?
Of course, you don't really have much of a chance when you have the federal government, the Department of Justice, prosecuting you.
So can you just kind of like explain, like in like simple terms, like for people who don't really have a background in law, to kind of understand like why was it a crime what everyone did? Why were the feds able to get you guys? What did you do that was considered to be?
Well, what we did was pretty much going around across the country, and basically you had these real estate guys who a lot of new people were coming into the business because there was so much money, and they would find properties, get a straw buyer, a guy with good credit, and the easy lending policies made anybody with 700 credit could get like a $500,000 loan with stated income. So they could just state whatever income. I said, I'm a hairdresser and I make, 300,000 a year. So they put it on their application. The banks didn't have to verify anything. And, the banks didn't do any due diligence. And so they would get a loan for $300,000 on a house that wasn't, worth as much. Then they get an appraiser to fudge the appraisal. They give him part of the money on the mortgage, and they close the deal with the seller, who was also part of the conspiracy, who didn't require a down payment. So actually, they weren't requiring much of a down payment at that time anyway. No money down, stated income, no doc loans. In the business, they called them liar's loans at the time. So this
was prior to 2009.
2008 was the crash. So this started probably in the late 90s, early 2000s. All this went on probably for 10 years before it reached a peak where everything just sort of, it was a bubble. The bubble
So
burst.
basically, the straw buyer would buy it, and then what would they do? Quit claim it to somebody else after they get it?
No, they just wouldn't make any mortgage payments, walk away. The house would go into foreclosure. The foreclosure would take a couple of years. And ironically, guys who were running these schemes would buy the same property back from the bank at foreclosure sales for like pennies on the dollar.
And were they also renting the properties like to tenants during that time?
That was Levitin was doing. He was renting the properties all along, not paying the mortgage while it was in foreclosure. So he's collecting money on top of money. It was,
And
it
then
was just
how were they able to make sure that they were the ones that were able to get the property at the foreclosure? Were they using judges or public officials who were running these foreclosures or involved in the process to make sure that it went to them? Or can you talk a little bit more about how they were buying it back and getting it?
no. I mean, these were sales that were, open to the public. There was some period of time where the banks got wind that the same people were buying the same houses that they bought before, and they tried to ban them. But then these people changed their names or made up new LLCs. But me personally, I was not involved in any of that stuff. I just did they came to me at the end of the process where they had already did all the paperwork and had it all ready to close. So lawyer has nothing to do with the loan application or the appraisal or anything like
Well,
that.
who drew up the closing docs?
Well, the bank sends the lawyers the closing documents, and the lawyers basically sit down with the clients and sign everything. The main thing with the lawyers is they prepare the HUD statement. And when you sign a HUD statement, it says you're signing under penalty of perjury, and the lawyer personally can be in trouble if the HUD statement is not accurate. So like my HUD statements showed the deposits being made, and there were no deposits. The seller and the buyer just agreed that there would be just a credit and not put any money down. So, I mean, in the big scheme of things, what I did was a huge crime? I mean, it was kind of small compared to what else was going on in these closings, but whatever, it's still a crime, and I pleaded guilty to it, and I went to jail. I paid the price for it. And then I got out of jail, and I started writing my blog about prison and I focused on a rabbi who I had known in New Haven, Rabbi Greer, Daniel Greer, who was being, he had not yet been sued. Right after I got out of jail, there was rumors that he was going to be sued for raping students, male high school students, grooming them for molestation. So I started writing about that, and then he was sued, and then he went to federal court, and they got a $15 million jury verdict against him, one of the largest cases in the history of Connecticut for a member of the clergy who raped students. And so I think part my blog may have had something to do with that. If the jurors were reading the blog, I think jurors do read these blogs or read the news. It's hard for them to avoid looking at the internet. Everyone's addicted to their cell phones. So in any event, so I wrote about him, and then he got arrested too, right? Because I was writing about how he should be arrested. And so after the verdict, they actually investigated him a year before the verdict, but didn't arrest him. After the verdict, 15 million, they decided to arrest him because they figured, well, if he won the civil case, if we arrest him, it wouldn't be very good for the criminal case. So they arrested him, and then the state's attorney's office reached out to me, Attorney Maxine Walensky, and so I went into her office and shared with her a lot of information about the witnesses. I helped contact the witnesses, bring in witnesses, helped her with the file because the civil file was voluminous. So there was transcripts and everything else. For her to digest everything would have been a very big task. I mean, for one state's attorney to review all that material. I mean, a lot of these criminal cases on the state level are, they're pretty much cut and dry, drug dealing, or someone gets shot or killed, or the trials aren't really that involved. This was very involved. So after the trial, he was convicted, and I think I had a big part of it, him getting convicted, because I did quite a lot of work for the state. They didn't really have anything when I went in there. They didn't even, all they had was the victim, and I brought in other witnesses. And these witnesses didn't want to testify because I guess in these types of cases, it's embarrassing. You're coming to court. I dragged them out. I talked to them. I had known them for some time. There were some other people who I wanted to come out too, but they refused to come out and testify. Anyway, after that whole drama, I tried to reapply for my law license. That was in 2018 or 19. And now it's 2026. And I'm still trying to get my law license back. And the state judiciary, the judges, and the lawyers who control the reinstatement process have basically chided me for my blog and all my First Amendment activity on the internet, and said we do not, so many words, they said you should shut down your blog. So they said, so I guess they didn't specifically say they didn't approve of my speech, but I guess when they say yes, they did. They said it was an inappropriate blog. It was had for whatever reason, it was too. I guess it was too offensive. Maybe I mean, but the First Amendment protects you from even offensive speech. Is protected under the First Amendment, and this you cannot be. Someone cannot withhold a license, which is your property. You have a property right to it, whether it's a law license or a real estate license, whatever, medical license, based on the contents of your speech. So I've been arguing that case for years now, and I'm on appeal now. And I mean, the other attorneys in my case were reinstated, no problem, who were convicted for worse crimes than me. There was one guy, not in my case, who had 3 DUIs, and they reinstated him to the bar and had him promise to attend AA meetings. So there was an African-American civil rights attorney, Josephine Smalls Miller, who's also been battling them for years to get her license restored. She didn't commit any crimes. She just had some ethical violations. But the state kept giving her a hard time, and because she was also very outspoken and vocal over the internet about injustices, and she's a civil rights attorney, so they banned her for 10 years from practicing law. Disbarred her for 10 years. That was the state of Connecticut. Now she went to the federal court, and the federal court looked at the state decision and said, this is ridiculous. In effect, said, this is outrageous. You will be admitted back to the federal bar. We will not suspend you for a day. So she gets suspended for 10 years by the state judiciary and doesn't get suspended for 1 minute by the federal judiciary on the same set of facts. Really crazy. So she's on appeal too.
What's her name? What's her name again?
Josephine Miller Smalls.
Josephine Miller Smalls from Connecticut.
Yes, if you Google her, you'll see stuff comes up on her. There was another attorney, Corey Brinson. He did plead guilty to conspiracy. He did in a federal case involving money. He was a minor player in some kind of money fraud scheme. And after he got out of jail, he got his LLM license, which is like it's
like your master's, but after you get your
it's like a PhD in law. It's like you have your GAD, and then you go for. He got that. He volunteered. He works. He started a company a nonprofit where he helps people get pardons and go through the system, like a pardon consultant, where he helps people. And they have also banned him for, he's an African-American male. They also banned, Justin, she's also fighting to get his license back. It's been years. And Josephine Miller thinks there may be some racial discrimination. She's written about this in her federal cases against the state. All of them were dismissed, but she knows civil rights and the employment. She does a lot of civil rights employment discrimination cases. So she used all her knowledge in that and applied it to the federal to the state judiciary. But she was shot down due to a lot of abstention doctrines involving immunity. The state of Connecticut judiciary has almost
absolute immunity.
Absolute,
complete absolute immunity, as they like to say in the Second Circuit.
Exactly. Yeah, I know you had some experience from what I understand.
So I want to talk a little bit back. So you ended up getting sentenced to 20 months, but you only did 18 months, right?
That's my good behavior.
Okay.
Although I stole the noodles, that's how I got the name Larry Noodles, because I stole. I took some noodles from the warehouse and took them back to my dorm. I worked at the warehouse and I had cooked them and I had put them in my locker, and the guards found them and said, "This is contraband. It's not allowed in your sleeping quarters." Everyone kept food in their sleeping quarters. I mean, you want to quick bunch on some.
Only in jail is food contraband.
Yeah, so they pick and choose. It depends on the weather who's gonna enforce these rules in prison. They don't like you. You get one day they just write you up a ticket.
Yeah. So we for those who are watching on Facebook Live, Mike V had said, "Is this another story of judicial corruption in Connecticut? The lawyers are all friends and they don't ever defend anyone." So for those of you who are just joining, we have the podcast right now live with Lawrence Dressler, and he was or still is an attorney licensed in Connecticut for 25 years now that practiced criminal and family law, and also did work in the federal courts. And he also what else did you do besides criminal? And did you do any civil? No, you said you worked in the public defender's office, right?
Public defender's office. I am suspended. I am suspended as an attorney. But what?
So were you a public defender in the New Haven office?
No, they assigned me cases. So I was an independent, called special public defender. So if they had conflict issues or they were just overwhelmed, they would refer out to private counsel. And then they would pay me for that.
Okay. So, and then just for clarification, you're currently suspended. Your bar license with the state of Connecticut is currently suspended. And when did they suspend it? On what date?
2014, almost 10 years ago.
So 2014, that's 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been 12 years that your license has been suspended, but you're currently on appeal in the Connecticut Appellate Court fighting that suspension right now, correct?
To get reinstated. I mean,
asked to get it reinstated.
All because of my blog. If I didn't do my blog and work with the state's attorney's office, getting a pedophile rabbi locked up, and writing about other things, maybe I would have had my license by now, because other people got their licenses back who had worse crimes than mine.
So let's back up. So when you were in Otisville, that was in Otisville, New York. And from what I understand, and just from doing a quick little search online, it looks like it's like a medium security prison camp, and that it is 70 miles northwest of New York City. It's known for campus style design and programs that accommodate Orthodox Jewish inmates. So is there like a very large Jewish population of inmates there?
Yes, many Jews.
And do they do any like special stuff there? Like I know it says here that they have they also have, it's considered to be more relaxed, and they have more things like a kosher food program, religious services. So do you have an option to go there? Or, I mean, how can they ensure that everyone gets sent there that's Jewish?
Well, the camp is made up of about 100 people. It's a very small part of the overall campus. The main prison, which is a medium, has about 700 people. And then there's this place called the J Unit, and everybody calls that the J Rats, because these are high profile guys who cooperated with the government. They have the best uh, living arrangements. It's like a college dorm. They have TVs and everything else. The camp was very Spartan. It wasn't really, you're sleeping on a bunk bed, a steel bed with a mattress that's a little bit bigger than a yoga mat, and these little tiny quarters, living spaces, cubicles. And as far as the Aleph Institute, which is a Jewish prisoner advocacy organization, helps to work with the government to steer Jews to the camp, because it does have kosher food. I mean, just the fact that there's all the Jews are there, Orthodox Jews are there, just in numbers makes it easier for them to accommodate them. So it's not really, it's not a vacation. I mean, there is the kosher kitchen was like just a closet. I mean, it was very tiny, and you would have one of the inmates who's been there for years. He's in charge of it, so nobody else can get involved in what he cooks. You got to eat. There's no options. Prison life is a lot different than something nobody will understand. There's a whole pecking order between the inmates and the guards. The inmates really run a lot of the prisons. They do. The guards cannot control all the inmates, so the guards kind of leave it to the inmates to people fighting over the TV, over the clicker in the TV, and fighting over the stupidest things. I mean, who may how do you break up these fights? I mean, the inmates, if the inmates start crying to the guards all the time because of what they're fighting over, then the guards will punish everybody. Lockdown, you're all like punished. So the inmates basically have to create their own system of society, their own laws and rules. And if like cleanliness, guys would come in there complete slobs, but you're living in such tight quarters. If you have a guy who's totally disgusting and he makes a mess everywhere and it makes it unsanitary for the other inmates, this guy is going to be harassed to no end. People will just scream at him all day until he cleans up. One guy would hang his underwear from wash his underwear in the sink and hang it from his bed. That's disgusting. So it was peer pressure. So everybody would yell at him, and that guy would quickly change his behavior. So I always tell people, even in my own family, when I was in prison, the place was spotless. It was old buildings run down and everything, but it was spotless. Everyone was clean, because if you did not clean up, you would really, guys could rat you out to the guards and have you thrown in the shoe, solitary confinement. That was rare, but that happened occasionally. They make up something, and the guards didn't care. It was like, okay, the guards will make up something too and throw you in there. So you got to either conform with the other inmates.
During your years working as a criminal defense attorney in the state of Connecticut, did you ever get to visit any clients in the prisons in the state of Connecticut and see for yourself the conditions of the state prison system of DOC?
I used to visit clients all the time in the Whaley Avenue lockup in Cheshire, upstate. And I always wondered what was going on behind the walls. I hear a lot of screaming and yelling and banging and noise. I'm like, what's going on over there? So I got the chance to see, whatever. It's very noisy. And it's nonstop. It's like day and night, and they keep the lights on all night for safety purposes. So if the guards have to quickly rush in, the lights are on. But try sleeping with the lights on you all night, and try what kind of stress. You don't get a good night's sleep sleeping on a steel mattress with the lights shining at. So people are grumpy, they're cranky, they're miserable. So it's
Yeah,
not
and
good
also
for.
like keeping the lights on 24/7 is actually a torture tactic. That's actually a form of psychological torture to do that to somebody. And I was asking about the state thing because you mentioned in the federal Otisville, you said it was like the inmates ran the prison. And I feel like in the state system, it's like the opposite, because I think that you hear stories all the time of what's going on in there. And I think if we were to compare what federal prison is like compared to what state prison, it's like a lot of people would look at it and say, there's really not much of a punishment for white collar crime. It's almost like a slap on the wrist compared to what some of these people endure for arguably less serious crimes and get thrown in state prison. And it's like it's truly inhumane. Like, you see the way that they have the females in York Correctional Institute in Connecticut in Niantic. It's like a dungeon. It's literally like a torture center. And you see all these cases, like Alex Taubes was representing somebody who was raped by multiple inmates by multiple COs at York, and tried to sue in federal court and through the claims commissioner and all that. And then they said, Michael Shea, federal judge, says, oh no, well, because the state of Connecticut has sovereign immunity, and because the Connecticut Department of Correction is considered the state, therefore they also have immunity, which is absolute immunity, that us as the federal government cannot dictate to the state what to do. So if we were to make a ruling in this case, it would set a precedent where the federal government is dictating to the state how to act, which would then make it so anytime a CO wants to rape an inmate in the future, they're going to think twice and say, oh no, I might get sued. So it's going to deter me from raping this inmate. So because of that, this is like the dumbed down version of his argument. I could like pull it up and read it to you, but that's
Sure.
literally what he said in his legal opinion, is that because of this sovereign immunity argument that we can't federal can't dictate state how to do their actions. So because that would arguably cause future COs to think twice before they sexually assault an inmate, it would be wrong for the federal court to rule on this case. And they said that even though she alleged that she had multiple assaults for multiple different COs on multiple different instances, they said she was only allowed to sue for like one of the instances for one of the times. And Attorney General William Tong's office is going so hard, throwing all this unlimited money at the case to fight it, to say, no, you shouldn't be able to sue for getting assaulted while you're in the custody of the state of Connecticut in their prison. And so it's like, I feel like it's so dangerous for women. And then you see men every day turning up dead. I just read somebody the other day, they were found in a prison in Connecticut. They were on a $20,000 bond since Monday. They were just found dead like yesterday. They're there for like 3-4 days and they're dying. What's going on here? And so it's like, I feel like if you look at, what you experienced in Otisville, I think it was probably like much more mild conditions compared to like what some of these guys are dealing with in Whaley Ave, for example. Do you agree?
Well, Whaley Avenue has more violent people in there all the time. I mean, Otisville, just the fact that these guys were mostly nonviolent, it's not going to be, much violence going on, although there were some incidents while I was there. Nothing major, but yeah, Whaley Avenue in some of the state prisons. But there's also the issue of who controls. I mean, the inmates and the guards sort of work together in many ways. The alpha inmates, I guess, and the guards cannot just rape people and get away without the inmates knowing about it. I mean, everyone knows what's going on there 24/7. And it's sort of like a incestuous relationship between the inmates and the guards. And the guards are always getting paid off. They're always getting arrested or charged with accepting bribes or smuggling in contraband all the time. You read about it. So and when I was there were certain inmates that were treated completely different than other inmates. And yeah, you have to ask yourself, were these guards, and the guards are low paid, uh, are they being paid off? And recently, um, there's a big article in the Times about Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's last days in prison. I mean, you had the guards were working like 22-hour shifts. Half of them were sleeping in the prison, weren't watching him, and they after he made one suicide attempt, they put him in another room with linens that were right there, which he used to rip up and kill himself, hang himself. So yeah, the system is broken, but the public, I mean, prisoners don't really have much political clout, or convicts don't have much political clout to change laws, as opposed to other political movements like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers got a lot of laws changed. And there should be mothers against inhumane punishment for prisoners, for our children who are in prison. And prisons have also turned into the dumping grounds for drug addicts, drug dependent people, and the mentally ill. I mean, in New Haven, they arrest people all the time on the green for having breakdowns. And what do they do with them? There's no mental hospital. They put them in the Yale psych unit. Maybe they put them in prison. Yeah, and then they just toss them out, and that's it. I mean, or they stay in prison for a while. Some of these guys become completely institutionalized, as we would say. There was one guy who was so used to prison life. I was in there with him. He was so afraid of going out on the outside, getting released, that he purposely got in a fight with another guy who punched him in the face. And so he would stay there another 3 to 6 months because he had no family. You know, these guys, they go to prison, families are broken up. You know, people all invariably get divorced. There's nothing worse than seeing a guy in prison, his wife sending him divorce papers. It's just sad, you know, and they have kids. Kids can grow up to be, become juvenile delinquents. Well, this guy, yeah, he started a fight because he's up in Otisville in the middle of nowhere, out of touch with his family because they can't drive all the way up there. So you lose touch with people. They don't want to talk to you. You have no friends. You have no relatives. And when you're released, what does the federal government do with you? They just dump you on the streets with nothing. Okay, so sink or swim. You know, good luck to you. You know what I mean? So then again, people invariably are going to commit crime again, or I don't care. I'll go back to prison. At least I had a roof over my head. I had food. I mean, what am I going to do?
Free health care. And actually, you're right. I remember learning in, I think, college about how back in the day we had these big mental institutions and people would be housed in these huge mental institutions. And then there was, a certain point where they just started shutting down all these places. But all these patients who were in these mental institutions just got thrown on the street, and they became the homeless community, which then turned into the prison population. And so, like you said, probably 70-80% of the prison population has untreated or undertreated mental health issues, and they're not getting the proper medical attention either, because they'll say, okay, a doctor will say you have to get a surgery and you're locked up in Connecticut. Then they'll put you on a waiting list and they'll say you need the surgery within 30 days. It's medically necessary. And then they're saying, okay, you're going to wait 2 years and you still didn't get the surgery. And this is in the news every day where people are dying and all this because they're being, for example, I don't know how it was in Otisville, but in York, CI, the only female prison in Connecticut, which is all the way up to being maximum security, has a system where if you need medical attention, even if you're a pregnant woman in labor, even if it's life or death, if you need medical attention, you have to fill out a piece of paper, write down your request, put it inside a little mailbox, and then they answer within 5 to 10 business days. So if it's an emergency, you still have to wait 5 to 10 business days to get medical attention. They don't care if you're going to die. People die in their cells every day. They have babies in the toilet every day. And like I said, you go try to sue and they say, "Oh, too bad. We have immunity. You can't sue us. Too bad. We can't be in trouble for anything. We're allowed to break the law. We're allowed to do anything we want." And you see the same thing in the family courts. You see the same thing with these judges who think that they can just do whatever they want. And, I know that I first saw you because I saw that you were posting about the Paul Boyne case on Facebook. And I noticed that you were posting some of the updates and things like that prior to him being sentenced. And that's what caught my attention at first. So did you know Paul personally, or have you ever spoken to him?
Before his trial, I had a few email correspondence with him over the years, because he would read my blog and ask me some questions about certain people or just rants. I mean, he was a character. But I mean, and then I saw he was coming up for trial, and then I thought this would be an interesting case to write about. So I had someone go to the courthouse and give me the information on what was going on. So I started writing about each day in the trial, and it was it's not just a run-of-the-mill trial. So I found it interesting. So I wrote about him and the First Amendment, and about the law regarding threats and online threats, and about how the state has made these state has criminalized a lot of what goes on in the internet. All the people who are writing right now on the internet, "I want to kill you," or "this guy should be dead," or anything violent, which is everywhere, could be considered a crime today. And so the law is still going through some growing pains as far as how the courts interpret each individual threat. But the question is, okay, so they're going to arrest Paul Boyne. Of all the people that are posting on the internet, who are they going to arrest? Will they arrest Paul Boyne, who threatened judges? Judges make are victims. Yes, they can be victims of a crime. They report the crime. So the state decides, of all the people who are reporting a crime, why should they, they have to pick and choose. They can't follow up. They can't arrest every crime, arrest someone on every crime. They can try to work with the people, say, "Oh, well, will you take down your blog, or will you do this?" I mean, a lot of times there are ways for the police to diffuse a situation or get a person to change their behavior without having to go through the whole, subjecting someone to the whole criminal justice system. So you have to question, well, they arrested Paul Boyne, and they also arrested a guy named Joe Gritz. Paul Boyne is on the far right of the spectrum, with his blogs about everybody being part of the judiciary, not the judiciary as in Jewish conspiracy. And on the other end of the spectrum, you had a guy named Joe Gritz, who was a rapper, who was very upset about his friend being shot and killed by a police officer. And so he wrote, "Somebody should die," and put a picture of the police officer on the internet. So they were both arrested and both convicted. And Paul was sentenced to 20 years, which I thought was way, way over the top for a threatening case, even just a threatening case with words. I mean, police arrest people. And most of these cases involve a boyfriend, girlfriend, stalker, threatening. There was a case in Milford where somebody was threatening his ex-wife, kept saying, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you." The police never arrested him. And then he ended up killing her. It was tragic. She had a family. So I guess the police are very much concerned about, who they're going to arrest, who they're not going to arrest. If they arrest people who aren't really any danger, and they're putting all the resources into Paul Boyne or Joe Gritz, while another guy in Milford is making real threats, and they sort of let that one slip through. Law enforcement, I mean, I respect law enforcement. I know police officers, and one police officer told me, yeah, we get calls all the time from lunatics that threaten to blow up or the police station or call us up and rant against the police. What are we going to, we don't do anything about it. They just try to diffuse it. They can't. So an officer,
Well,
you need to
also,
have a.
I think it's important for people to really understand, like, and I just looked it up. He wasn't even convicted of threatening. I don't know if there was originally threatening as one of the charges, but it said that his actual he was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree stalking and 2 counts of electronic stalking for each of the 3 judges, which I believe is also called cyber stalking in Connecticut. And it said a total of 18 charges. So I looked it up here, like just for example, what is stalking in the first degree in Connecticut? It's when a person commits stalking in the second degree, which is defined as knowingly engages in a course of conduct directed at a specific person or interferes with that person's property. Also, if the person intentionally and for no legitimate purpose engages in a course of conduct directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear that his or her employment, business, or career was threatened. So it says that they have to do that, and they were previously convicted of stalking in the second degree, or his or her conduct violates a court order in effect at the time of the offense, or the person who was stalked is under 16 years of age. So as far as them being able to convict him of stalking in the first degree, how is it stalking in the first degree if he didn't have the only thing would be if he had a prior conviction, because I don't believe there was any court order in effect that he violated at that time. And these people were not under 16. They were all adult judges who were allegedly the victims. And then here it says, like, it has to be directed at a specific person. From what I understand, he was running this family court circus website. So how is that directed at a specific person? Like, if you sent me a message directly, that's directing it to me. If I just post something on my page or post it on the internet, unless I'm saying, dear Larry, this message is for you, it's being directed at the public. It's being directed at the general public, the internet. It's not being directed at just at you. So they can't say directed at that person. And then it says, cause them to fear for their employment. These judges know they have immunity. They know that they're doing crimes every day and they get away with it. There's no reasonable threat for their employment. They can't lose their job. And then for them to say that it serves no legitimate purpose, it does serve a legitimate purpose, because a lot of the things he was saying about these judges are true. He was saying things about Grossman, and Grossman's a monster. So, like, I feel like for her to go up in court and put on this little crying act, like, I'm scared, I'm so scared, and like acting like she's a victim when she terrorizes and rips apart families every day and doesn't care. It's like it's like a slap in the face. Like, this is like political persecution. And then the news is trying to like paint him as some criminal. This guy walks with a cane. You're giving him 20 years. That's basically life. He's basically in there for life.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Whether in the old days, stalking was somebody having a lot of direct contact with the person who's being stalked, the victim, and it's usually a pattern of phone calls, drive-bys, and everything else. So in today, the stalking laws are mostly regulate, if you're texting the person, chat, online, going after the person through online communications. So if you keep doing that and calling, I mean, that's stalking. But today with the cyber stalking laws, it seems to, they seem to put the law focuses on the victim, how the victim feels about the posting. So in a way, the First Amendment, I mean, kicks in where it kind of clashes with the criminal statute, because here you say the criminal law, you're going to criminalize something that's protected by the First Amendment, or is it not protected by the First Amendment? For you to post about somebody and say, I wish this person were dead, or I wish this person, I hate this person. I mean, that's
None of that is a threat, and none of that crosses the line of the First Amendment. And here I have the statute here for cyber stalking. I pulled it up to see exactly another one of Connecticut's unconstitutional laws on the books, because we know they have so many. But this literally says this can literally be construed to be applied to anything, by the way. It says it's a Class D felony, and a person is guilty of electronic stalking when a person with the intent to kill, injure, harass, or intimidate uses any interactive computer service or electronic communication service, electronic communication system, or electronic monitoring system to place another person under surveillance, or otherwise to engage in a course of conduct that, one, places such other person in reasonable fear of the death of or serious bodily injury to A, such person, B, an immediate family member of such person, C, an intimate partner of such person, or 2, causes, attempts to cause, or would be reasonably expected to cause substantial emotional distress to a person described in subparagraph A, B, or C. Family member can mean spouse, blah, blah, blah. So basically, at the minimum, if you have the intent to intimidate somebody and you use a computer or any electronic device to make the person at minimum feel that somebody that they or their family or somebody they love might have emotional distress, that's a Class D felony. But it's like, since when is posting something with the intent to intimidate another person a crime? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, where do you draw the line with the First Amendment? Because if I say, look, I want to intimidate you, so I'm going to post something, but it's poetic, or it's subliminal, or it's like something that is like not a direct threat, it's not directly to you, but I know that you're going to read it and it'll intimidate you. That could be anything. I could literally post a picture of a cat and you could say, well, I was scratched by a cat when I was 5 years old and that scares me, so now I want to have her arrested. And that's literally like what they put this man in 20 years for. Because from what I understand, he was posting things that were like, you know, kind of disturbing and had like anti-Semitic things in there. And but from what I thought, wasn't he like quoting Shakespeare and stuff like that?
Well, the question is, yeah, the law is still in a state of uncertainty. With the United States Supreme Court has to clarify how the difference between how the First Amendment applies to stalking and threat type of criminal
Indirect.
statutes. But
Yeah, like indirect communication.
Yeah. But in this case, yeah, Paul Boyne and Joe Gritz sort of were easy targets because they actually posted, you know, the names, the faces, the addresses. I don't know if Gritz posted the address, but this is the officer. Here's his face. I think somebody should kill him. You know, I mean, something to that effect. And Paul Boyne was like, here are the judges. This is where they live. You know,
but they're public figures. Their addresses are public. Their face, and they're a public official. So it's like there's no expectation of privacy. And if you want your address hidden, then pay Google to take it off. Grossman's address is right up there. And in Mount Carmel and Hamden, anyone can just Google Jane Grossman address.
Okay, don't say anything more. You get arrested.
But seriously, like, how is that? Okay. Like, anyone can Google anybody's name and their address and their phone number and all of this stuff. And so it's like, there's no expectation to think that my picture should be hidden. There's ways to make that stuff go away, especially if you are a public official. There's ways to make all that stuff private. So I just feel like it's so twisted that they can like take what he said, because he didn't say a direct threat. He just said, oh, well, the only thing they can do is storm the courthouse with rifles or some crazy thing, which apparently was quoting some Shakespeare or something like that. But the way that he was incorporating everything was perceived as a threat, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, if you'll notice the national people, the big shots. I know you're a big shot podcaster too, but the really, like the Tucker Carlsons and all these other big with millions of followers, you'll notice they're very careful not to talk about personal details of anybody, and they go, they'll mention people, they will not mention where they live, where because everybody's afraid of these laws, and the First Amendment hasn't addressed them, and then people get swatted. If you have millions of followers, yeah, they're just. I mean, the last guy who sort of got away with it was with Sandy Hook with Alex Jones, which is a really bizarre case where here's a guy who was posting, ranting about a conspiracy that the families made up the shooting. It was all lies, and he encouraged people to basically harass the families and reveal the conspiracy. And people actually did. They went to Sandy Hook, they harassed, they knocked on doors, they called these people, these families. Some people had to move out of their houses and change their addresses. And this went on for years. And the state of Connecticut didn't do anything about it, which is bizarre. Where you have a seemingly real issue case of stalk online type of incitement to violence, and real violence occurred. Whereas Paul Boyne had his blog for 10 years, and from what I understand, nothing happened. The FBI investigated and they didn't pursue charges. Joe Gritz it was like a one-off posting, and he's arrested. Alex Jones, nothing happens. I don't know if any police reports were filed against him. I think I requested from the town of Sandy Hook any police reports, but they said there were none. But I find that very hard to believe that nobody in Sandy Hook.
You find it hard to believe that nobody in Sandy Hook what? You okay?
Time out. I think my session has to end, but let's continue this.
Okay.
Hard to believe nobody ever called the police on Alex Jones, but I have family obligations. I got to run, but we should do this again real soon. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry that you had to cut it short, but I appreciate all your time. And yeah, we'll have you come back on so we can follow up with a part 2 very soon.
Okay. Have a nice weekend.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much.